In this series of videos, we'll be looking at solving equations. In this specific video, we'll be looking at solving one-step equations. If you're having a hard time solving equations, you might want to keep in your mind a mental picture of a balanced scale. The way a balanced scale works is if I place something on this side, this left side, in order for it to balance perfectly, I have to place the same amount on that side. In other words, those two weights are equal to each other. If I place more in the left side than in the right side, then the left side will be heavier and they will no longer be balanced out. So let's say you start with something balanced and you take away something from the left side. Well, if you want it to still be balanced, you'd have to take away the same amount from the right side. Vice versa, if you add something to the left side, to keep the two sides balanced, you'd have to add something to the right side. So when we solve equations, think of the left side over here as one side of the equation, and this is another side of the equation, and this middle beam, think of that as the equal sign in the equation. And our goal is to keep the equation balanced while still moving things around. So let's look at some one-step equations. First off, you'll notice we have x plus 3 equals 12. The way I like to tell my students to solve these is to put an equal sign down, to put a line down the equal sign, showing that you have a left side of the equation and a right side of the equation. Right now they're equal because the equal sign tells me they are equal. Our goal is to get the variable, aka the letter, by itself. In this case it's x. It can be any letter or any symbol. So what is on the same side as x? Well, plus 3. So we have to get rid of the plus 3. And to get rid of numbers, we have to do the opposite. The opposite of plus 3 is minus 3 on both sides. Because remember, if we want to keep an equation balanced, what we do to one side, we have to do to the other. So 3 minus 3, that goes to 0, so it's gone. And we're left with just x. And then you do 12 minus 3, which is 9. On this one, we're going to start the same. Line down the equal sign. And we want x by itself, so we need to get rid of a negative 5. Well, the opposite of negative 5 is positive 5 to both sides because you have to keep it balanced. So this crosses out because negative 5 plus 5 is 0. So x equals negative 7 plus 5 is negative 2. So that's what we do when we have a positive or negative number in the equation. Now what do we do when we have 3x equals 15? Well, what 3x means when they're attached, when there's no symbol between them, the number and the variable, that means 3 times x. So we're trying to figure out a way to undo multiplication. So what is the opposite of multiplication, you have to ask yourself? Well, the opposite of multiplication is division. So we have to divide both sides by 3. 3 divided by 3 is 1. Well, 1x is just x. And 15 divided by 3 is 5. So x equals 5. So let's try it out over here. We have negative 2 times x, so we have to divide by negative 2. Whatever's in front of the x, we have to divide by. So negative goes away, 2 goes away. So x equals, let's see, negatives cancel out. 18 divided by 2 is 9. Now, the most complicated case is when we have a fraction with the x. Basically, this means 2x divided by 3. The way we deal with fractions is we need to multiply both sides by something we call the reciprocal. The reciprocal of a fraction is when you take it and you flip it. So the reciprocal 2/3 is 3 on top, 2 on the bottom. 3 on top, 2 on the bottom. To both sides, remember, what you do to one side, you must do to the other. So 3 times 2 is 6, 2 times 3 is 6. And so that all cancels out and leaves me with just x. Because 3 times 2 is 6, 2 times 3 is 6, 6 over 6 equals 1. And 1 times anything is just itself. So here we do 8 times 3, that's 24, divided by 2. And 24 divided by 2 is 12. So let's try it here. Let's multiply by the reciprocal, which is going to be negative 5 over 4 on both sides. Well, negative times negative makes a positive. 5 times 4 is 20. 4 times 5 is 20. So 20 over 20 is just 1x. 16 times negative 5, that's going to be negative 80 divided by 4. And 4 goes into 80, negative 80, negative 20 times. Okay, there are 6 problems here. I want you to pause the video and try them on your own. Okay, let's see what we can do with them. Draw a line down the equal side. The opposite of plus 7 is minus 7. So x equals, because 7 minus 7 is 0. 5 minus 7 is negative 2. Line down the equals. We want x by itself. The opposite of negative 5 is plus 5 to both sides. So that goes to 0. So x equals 11. So 2 times x, we divide both sides by 2. That goes away. So x equals 4. Negative 6 times x, we divide by negative 6 on both sides. That cancels out the number and the negative, so x equals, let's see, negatives go away. 24 over 6 is 4. And now for the complicated but fun fractions. So 5 over 7x equals 20. We multiply both sides by the reciprocal, which is what it is when you flip the fraction. 35 over 35 is 1, so just x. 20 times 7, that's 140 divided by 5. And you plug that in, you get x equals 28. And finally here, we're going to do the same thing. We're going to multiply by the reciprocal. Negative 9 over 4 on both sides. So negatives cancel. 36 over 36 gives you 1, so x equals. Negative times a negative is a positive. 12 times 9 is 108 divided by 4. And then 4 goes into 108 27 times. Please study these and make sure you can do these one steps because we're going to move into 2 steps next, and you have to be able to do these.